Hello, YouTube. Today I wanted to talk about a new conversation. This new conversation centers around what I know to be true from my own experience and from working as a sponsor to several young men that grew up in the digital age. We're talking about young men, just 18, 19 years old. And I've already taken several sponsees who have gotten in legal trouble, hadn't even become old enough to drink yet because of the porn use that they were doing. And it gets down to a lot of habit cycles that these young men were participating in. And I hate to say it, but this was not something that they did in isolation. In other words, that they were communicating to other people within their peer groups and basically just traffic in pornography. So through conversations they had with people inside of a peer network, using applications in order to actually communicate and talk to other people, they were, trafficking in illegal content. Now, were they going out and exploiting somebody and taking nudes without consent? Well, not entirely. There was a consensual aspect to this because they're interacting with young women in their peer group. But usually, or initially, the download and the capture was done through consent. But young boys being young boys, they talk to one another. Now, when I was a young man, this capability didn't even really exist unless you had Polaroids or something like that. But because we're in a new time, we can easily take an image that we've just captured and then show someone else. And sometimes it's just holding up the cell phone, right? And other times it's like sending that photo or that video to somebody else. And they're using all different types of applications, whether it's Discord or Snapchat. And what a lot of these young men don't understand is that for several years now, the very large, like WeChat, all the large vendors that are out there, they've taken on a policy, even though their messages are encrypted. They've taken on a policy that says, you know what, if you're going to use our network in order to transfer information, we're going to initiate an early script as we upload this photo, convert it to a hexadecimal, and then check it versus a database to see if there's any known criminal images that are out there. In other words, has this image been used before, caught by somebody else, and identified as potential, child pornography or child sexual abuse material? And again, this when I say child sexual abuse material, this doesn't mean that like they're taking pictures of like 7-year-olds. This is usually people who are within their peer group. But still, it is a moral problem because chances are, even if a woman had freely given that video to somebody else, she didn't intend it to be passed around amongst his friends, right? And that's the constant struggle here is that a lot of these young men have not considered the moral ramifications of what they're doing. But the further conversation, the one that I'm talking to you about right now, are both the civil and the legal complications that they're doing. And it's not even a complication, it's a reality. It's against the law to do these things. And getting back to these companies, once if they catch that image or that video as being inside of one of their databases, or sometimes they don't even catch it that way. Sometimes it's just through a review process. However they catch it, what are they going to do once they've established that it is in fact illegal? Well, they're not. First off, they're not going to allow it on their servers. Most of the time, they will cancel the account of the person who did it. Not always. Sometimes the data itself will be put into an isolated area, which will allow, and they'll contact the authorities. They'll contact the authorities, and then from there they get into real legal complications. And just as an example, one of the sponsees that I was working with, basically the cops just showed up at his door and said, "Can we see your cell phone?" Um, so this is scary shit, man. Like when you're an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, and all of a sudden the police are at your front door and they're saying, "Can I see your phone?" What the hell do you do next? These are people who haven't had the life experiences yet to be able to formulate like how to deal with the situation. Because what does that do, man? You get in front of a prosecutor. You get in front of a prosecutor. Shit, I was an adult when this happened to me. And I had all the cards in my favor, despite the fact that I got caught. I didn't talk to the police. I did a lot of things right, and I still suffered from my consequences. These young kids, man, they have no fucking clue what to do. They're really going to get hurt by this process. It eliminates career opportunities. If you're going to a state university and you get on a sex offenders list, guess what? You're probably not going to that university anymore. They're going to kick your ass out or severely limit your accessibility. In most states, they won't even let you onto the actual facility itself, because there's laws in place about that. Why? Because a lot of the universities and colleges that are out there, they actually have daycares. Sorry, you can't get within 1,000 feet of that place. I'm generalizing here, but a lot of states are like that, man. It fucks you up. And so the conversation that I think we need to start having as a society revolves around this concept that we have a new generation, well, actually several new generations of young men who are growing up in a world where everything is accessible digitally. They still have a social circle of other people who, they're still doing boy things. They're collaborating, sometimes conspiring, and oftentimes, like if this was 40, 50 years ago, if there was, something that I would label as unethical or immoral, their peer groups still might do that, but there might be some parental override at some point, unless they're just sneaking off and like getting the hell away from their parents. But there's only a limit to the thing that they can do. It's probably only going to be like a local access thing, like like if you're robbing a liquor store, or getting some porn underage from the the local CVS or something like that. I don't know, but I'm just citing examples. Now, with the pornography example, you could take that image that you took of like a girlfriend, some girl you met on a cam service. That thing might get passed around 1,000 times because your buddy took it and he passed it to 5 of his buddies, etc., etc., etc. Girl reports it. It gets put into the National Child Sexual Abuse Archives, gets hashtagged almost immediately. That process happens. It gets hashtagged, and then every single, not only police service, but every single software package that is utilized by these large IT firms can now identify it as child sexual abuse material. And you're nabbed, man. You're nabbed. So I think we need to start having conversations, not only with ourselves. Like if you're over 18 right now, I hope you're listening to this and I hope you're paying attention to this. That you have to be cognizant of your own activities. I can't stop making you watch porn. I'm here to help people that are in that porn recovery loop cycle. But you know what? If you continue to do it, I can't stop you from doing that. But what I can do is ask you to have a little bit of ethical consideration about the content that you are shuffling around. And if you know somebody, maybe you're on my side of the fence, maybe you're already working inside of a recovery program and you're trying to get the hell away from pornography as much as possible. It doesn't stop there. As citizens, meaning that you're a part of a greater society, we really have to start working towards protecting, ourselves and our peers, and that includes women, right? God, could you imagine being a woman growing up in this day and age? Can you imagine? Man, like anything you say or do that, might even be considered remotely sexual in front of a camera, that shit might get passed around. We need to start having consideration for other people, and part of that consideration is when not to share content, when to not record content, no matter how horny you fucking get, right? You know, if there's even the remote possibility that something might get passed around, don't do that. The legal responsibilities are finally catching up with everybody on the internet. It used to be when I went through my own legal process, like, you'd look out on like Google News search and you'd see like maybe one or two arrests, like, a week for child sexual abuse material. If you follow my Twitter handle, I constantly am posting news content. I'm constantly posting news content, and I'm using keyword meta searches when I'm doing that. I can't tell you. I hide you guys from all of that on my Twitter. Every single week, it must be 20, 25 arrests every single week in the United States. Just guys getting caught. Now, knowing all the life experience that I went through and what happened after my arrest, I mean, I can honestly tell you that I'm sure that a large majority of those people who get arrested are not pedophiles. I can almost assure you of that. Like me and like the young guys I'm sponsoring, they get into a level of comfort being on the internet thinking that they can just get away with shit. And sometimes it's not about child sexual abuse material, but maybe they're looking at some really other heinous shit. I mean, some guys are like into BDSM, some guys are into, animal stuff. I'll try not to judge you on any of that because look where the fuck I ended up at. But the reality is that a lot of these dudes, every single one that I talk to, every single one of the guys that I talk to, they started off porn the same damn way I did, right? It just started getting out of control one day and it kept on upping it until something bad happened, right? And that something bad doesn't always happen or to always end in arrest. A lot of the guys that I working with, I would say like not the vast majority, but a fair amount ended up with legal consequences. But the other ones, they realized like their ethical conscience was starting to catch up on them, and they just kind of realized like, hey, I'm putting myself in a bad spot here. I almost got caught, or I did get caught by a wife or a loved one, and this could have been a lot worse, whatever that situation is. And then sometimes the pornography causes other problems, like with me, the stress, the anxiety, depression. You keep on masturbating all the time, and that shit slowly starts to creep up with you, man. And that's the other ramification for using porn or constantly consuming porn. All of these things need to be talked about, honestly and openly. And you know what? I wouldn't oppose this being done out of school. Like, why is the concept of legal consequences and civil consequences to pornography consumption not being discussed in schools, right? And if there's any districts out there that have started that, thank you very much for like at least initiating that conversation. But you know what? All the guys that I talk to, that conversation's not being happened. No one's talking about this. If you were to put a couple of 20-year-old guys who are serving time in prison right now because they traded a picture of their girlfriend, or were going out and like downloading some porn from like 4chan or something like that and got busted. Like, have those conversations, scare the shit out of people, man, because it needs to start happening. These consequences are catching up with a lot of people, and it keeps on getting more. Like, I am seeing more and more and more men in my groups, but also inside of the arrest sheets. The rap sheets are getting huge, man. It's no fucking joke. We need to start having these conversations, because I don't know, like, I feel like I'm lucky. Like, I worked through this. It took a while, but I got through it. A lot of these dudes, they're not having happy endings, man. They're serving 5, 10 years, sometimes in federal penitentiaries. Dude, when you get a federal offense like that, you know what happens to you? There's no probation. You're serving that time, right? There's not going to be a probation review when you're inside the pen, inside of a federal penitentiary. They're not going to be able to ever get rid of that. It'll always be on their record till the day they die. What happens when you try to do a job interview? You have to explain what happened in that time, right? Yeah, I got busted for downloading a 13-year-old girl on a webcam, right? How do you explain that when you're like 25, 30 years old, midlife, right? How do you explain that to a potential employer? You can't. And look around in the society right now. You'll see comments like wood chipper and shit like that. Because unfortunately, general society, they don't have an understanding of any of this. Like a lot of people don't even understand porn addiction in general, and they can't understand the leaps that happen. Well, I'll explain the leap to you really quick. You're 17 and you're doing lots of heinous shit. You're 16 and you're doing lots of heinous shit, and then you turn 18. So you aged one more year, and now legal consequences can happen to you, right? And sure enough, just at the point where it matters the most, that's when the law is going to catch up with you. You don't hear too much about an underage minor being arrested for child sexual abuse material, but damned if you'll hear it from the adults, right? And you want to talk about, like last week, there was a national incident. A kid 19 years old got arrested. What do you think's going to happen? He's still like years away from being able to legally drink. His life is fucked, right? We got to start having these conversations, man. And I don't know where it starts at. Maybe it starts in civic organizations. Maybe we have to start leaning on groups like Fight the New Drug, Exodus Cry, No See, you name it. Like whatever that organization is, we got to start having real conversations about, looking at yourself responsibly and accepting the consequences, the digital consequences that can happen in adulthood, that you can't start acting with reckless abandon anymore. It's not the cowboy era of the 90s and early 2000s. That world is gone. Responsibility is now starting to creep up with everyone. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I'm hoping that this message reaches somebody, and it's somebody important. And, if you're not one of those people, I'm sorry. I just tore your ear off on this one. Anyway, if you have comments, questions, concerns, feel free to go up to my Twitter handle on the top of the page, and I try to answer DMs as much as possible. You can also email me at roadtorecovery11@yahoo.com. Again, that's road, the number 2, the number recovery at the number 11@yahoo.com. And feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I do not monetize this channel at all. I never will. I do this as all 12-step recovery work. This is all giving back and trying to help others out. So take care of yourself. Have a good day.